Hello everybody. Today I'm going to be analyzing Pulp Fiction, and this video is going to be very chaotic and some parts will be graphic, obviously, because Pulp Fiction is kind of a graphic movie. And the quality will go in and out because I changed settings multiple times throughout this filming process. So sorry, can't do anything about it now. I already put in too much effort. So thank you. Hope you enjoyed the video. I have always wanted to do something like this where I analyze a film online, but I've struggled to do something like this because I feel like I'm not articulate, or like I have really abstract concepts that I can't verbalize correctly. Today I'm just going to try to blur everything out, and I'll try to fix it all with editing and like maybe clarify some things if I like draw some diagrams and put them on the screen later. I don't know. Today I'm going to try to expand on some of my viewpoints on the movie. So if you haven't seen the movie Pulp Fiction is kind of hard to describe because it's such like an erratic plot line, but it basically follows I wrote six characters. I have like a little paper here where I wrote notes and like quotes and things. It's a picture of Johnny Travolta as a hamburger. I noted six characters: Vincent, Mia, Marcellus, Jules, Butch, and Fabian. Listening to this list now, I probably should have mentioned Bunny and Pumpkin instead of Fabian, but whatever. You'll see my point about Fabian later. Basically, they're all sort of connected in a crime ring. The timeline is very non-linear, so it like jumps around a lot. And you find out how all six of the characters are connected by the end of the movie. Lord Marcellus, the crime lord, he's the leader, but honestly, there's like no organized way for me to analyze this movie. Whatever. The way Marcellus is portrayed makes me feel like he's not even really the leader of this crime ring, because it's like for the first half of the movie, they don't show Marcellus's face. Maybe half is generous. I don't know. For the first like section of the movie, they don't show Marcellus's face at all. It's just every time they pan to him, you either just hear his voice or it's like his back silhouette. For the second half, he becomes like actually embedded in the plot line with the other characters, almost to the same level as all the other characters, which is really interesting to me because he's supposed to be like the leader who they're kind of all scared of to some capacity, or working under, or have some sort of deal with. So all of them are connected to Marcellus, this crime guy, in some way, but then by the end of the movie, he kind of comes down to their level, or he's portrayed in a way that makes him come down to their level. Yes, also in the scene where Marcellus and Butch are trapped in that pawn shop's basement, and Marcellus just got like, Butch is scared, he basically gets a katana and like rescues Marcellus. That scene I think was really pivotal in introducing the viewer to the idea of like, this guy, even though he's on the top, he's not really on the top. He's just another pawn. The fact that it's a pawn shop too, I feel like is clear symbolism of this. By pawn, I mean there's obviously this theme of the banality of evil, the idea that people can do evil without the intention of doing evil. It's almost sort of casually embedded into their daily routine. This idea is also portrayed in a lot of mob movies and just crime movies in general, I guess. And the fact that the leader himself in this movie was Marcellus was put in a position where he was forced to submit, and then he had to like afterwards, it was so awkward, he had to like make up for it, just like pretend like it didn't happen, and was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get your ass and like I'm going to send all my men after you. That scene was very intentional in setting Marcellus up as arguably the dude with like one of the worst fates, other than the guy who accidentally got shot in his face, simply because of his standing as the ringleader, that so many people respect him. The fact that he got in a pawn shop shows that he is also just another pawn, despite this so-called like arbitrary status of respect that he somehow like gathered for himself. He's still just another pawn in this overarching cycle of normalized evil, and he is just another perpetrator of that. And I think that scene really highlights that. Okay, enough about Marcellus. I just feel like Marcellus is a good place to start because he's like the reason, he's portrayed as the reason why all these other characters get wound up in all of this shit. They portray him as such for the first half of the movie because, again, they portray him as so elusive, like they only show the back part of his silhouette. But then in the second half, you start to realize after that pawn shop scene, oh no, he's not the cause, he's just another victim, he's just another pawn. It's a strange thing to really like try to explain, because there's not really, I think as humans we all want to kind of point to a cause, to something like, oh yeah, this caused them to act this way. But it also, just the fact that the movie is overall filmed in a very absurd way, and a lot of the events seem almost random until like the very end at least, shows that there is not really a root cause. There is no Marcellus. There is no Marcellus. That is one of the overarching themes of the story overall. Okay, next, Mia Wallace is Marcellus's wife, icon, obviously. She kind of became like the face of the movie, literally like the poster child of the movie. She's on like every single poster, and she has such a like distinct vibe, and it's also like Uma Thurman. It's interesting that people pay so much attention to her, because to me it doesn't feel like she played that much of a role in the movie. I think the role that she played was kind of like this escapist, again, pawn. Sorry, I'm gonna use that word a lot. Yeah, she's used almost as this pawn for Vincent, who I'll like introduce later, to kind of like be able to romanticize his position in this ongoing cycle. She is Marcellus's wife, but she's also like, I forget what she even is. Is she like a model or like a drug addict? I'll probably speak later and be like, oh yeah, she's a model.
She's a former actress.
I think she's in some sort of like creative position, I think, or she was. Has that vibe, I think, because of the fact, like, the setting that she's portrayed in. Marcellus's house, he's wealthy, and he has like a very Art Deco-y kind of place, and she's wearing a white button-up, black slacks, not really the vibe of a drug addict, but she is a drug addict. I forgot to mention that's like her main thing. She's very addicted to cocaine, but she has this like mystery about her that's very sexy, but also kind of scary at times. She's very like weird girl. She knows that she's almost just like an escape, or used as an escape for these men. I can't explain it. For this I don't really have any evidence. It's just like all of the things surrounding her in the movie, like the way she dresses, the way she speaks, the way she looks at like the men, the way she dances and is like kind of reckless and like ditzy. She kind of just knows that her role in this entire thing, which also kind of adds, like, she's like the most reckless, I think, but she almost feels the most mature next to like Jules. She doesn't say it, but you can just tell that she's extremely self-aware. So I think it was Marcellus asked Vincent to take Mia out and kind of keep her company while Marcellus is away doing his crime stuff. And he says yes, obviously, because he's like scared of Marcellus and works for Marcellus. Vincent works for Marcellus, okay? So Mia goes out with Vincent, who is an employee of Marcellus. She goes out with him because Vincent was asked to take Mia out because Marcellus is busy doing crime lord things. When he takes her out, they go to this shop. They go to like this tacky 50s diner. What do I even remember about this scene? Okay, it's hard because I'm filming on my phone, so I can't really look anything up. All I have is my notes. She gets like an $8 milkshake. I remember them specifically saying like the milkshake is $8, or was it $5? He was like, wow, does it have like rum in it or something? He says something like, that's an expensive ass milkshake, and she doesn't even care because she's so desensitized to everything. She just did a line before like going to this diner, and they were like, oh, we're having like a dance competition, 50s style like sock hop type dance competition, and she's like, oh, we'll do it. And she volunteers for herself and Vincent, and they end up winning the dance competition. And that's like that iconic scene with like just the overall whimsy, kind of tackiness and mystery behind all of the scenes that Mia Wallace is in, says to me that she's very detached, she's hedonistic, she knows why she's with these men. Later, when Mia and Vincent return to Marcellus's house, and Mia's like clearly very giddy because they just won the dance competition, and she's like bringing home this trophy, She puts on this record and she just starts dancing. Vincent is very like excited as well because it's like, oh, like a night off kind of. Even though it's not really a night off, it feels like a night off because it's like this girl who's like charming and cute and ditzy and whatever. I mean, he goes to the bathroom, and while he's in the bathroom, he leaves out his coat and she finds heroin in his coat, but she thinks it's cocaine. So she snorts it, and before this, she has had like multiple lines before this. So she's already pretty high, and she's obviously starts overdosing because it's a lot of heroin to put in a line. Vincent comes out of the bathroom, sees her overdosing, takes her, drives her to, I forget, it's like one of his friends who's like somehow also involved, but he's kind of like irrelevant. That's like his main role in the movie is like as a friend that he takes. I forget, I'm sorry. Mia's like passed out. Vincent's friend is like, I have whatever the name of that shot is that you like plunge into someone's heart to like make them, adrenaline shot, that's what it is. His friend's like, yeah, I have an adrenaline shot, but I've never done it before. And he's like, well, I've never done it before. And they start like arguing back and forth as Mia's just like, and then Vincent's finally like, fine. And then the friend's like, the moment I bring a girl who's OD'd to your house, then I'll do it, but you brought her to my house, so you should do it, which is a fair point. And then he does it, Vincent does it, and then Mia like jerks back to life, and obviously all of them are very relieved that she's alive. So what does this have to say about the theme of the movie? Well, Mia accidentally overdosed on heroin shows that this cycle, or like being caught up in this cycle, is proven to be very self-destructive. Their stories are all interwoven, but because if you're in this cycle where evil is banal and you genuinely feel helpless and you're desensitized to killing and stealing and doing all of these objectively immoral acts, and you just happen to have heroin in your coat pocket because you're carrying out some sort of immoral act because you're stuck. You're stuck in this situation and you can't get out and you're helpless and you have no other means to live and you honestly don't know any life outside of this. So you do it, and some girl who's also desensitized to drug use and her so-called husband being away all the time finds a drug, she's gonna be like, oh, yippee! She's not going to think critically about the consequences of using the drug. That is a very strong metaphor. You snort cocaine because you're detached, and you keep being detached, you're going to eventually accidentally snort heroin. Enough about Mia Wallace, let's move on. So next I have Vincent. I feel like that's the natural progression of these things because I just talked about Vincent. Vincent just took her out. Vincent is kind of, in my head, he is kind of the main character simply because I feel like he shows up in the most amount of scenes. He is at the very beginning when some dude's house, because they didn't get, like, they cheated Marcellus or something. Some dude's house cheated Marcellus, they shoot up the dude. He's with Jules. Vincent and Jules show up to this random guy's house, and this random guy like owes Marcellus something, whether it's like money or like he cheated him out of something. I don't even remember, it's irrelevant. He did Marcellus dirty in some way. So Vincent and Jules go over to straighten it out. Jules gets very mad. He like punches. Jules is basically Vincent's like partner. And Jules gets very mad, shoots the guy, and then the guy's like partners shoot at Vincent and Jules, but Vincent and Jules for some reason get none of the bullets on them. I'll explain later what I think this means in the overall story when I talk about Jules. A few moments prior to this is at the very beginning of the movie, like almost the first scene, but right after the first scene, the second scene. Vincent is telling Jules about what they call quarter pounder with cheese in France. He like asks, he's like making small talk kind of, but it's not small talk because it's kind of bizarre small talk. He's like, you know what they call a quarter pounder with cheese in France? They don't call it the same thing. And do you know why that is? And he's like, no. And he's like, because of the metric system. They call it the Royale with cheese. And he was like, really? The Royale with cheese? Jules is very entertained by this. When they go into the apartment to straighten out this dude that has like some shit with Marcellus, they're eating burgers. Burgers! Okay, I'm going to sound crazy to half of you. And then to the other half, you're going to be like, well, duh. The red and yellow that is used in the Pulp Fiction logo and also placed strategically throughout the movie, you often see the color red and you often see the color yellow. And the fact that burgers, diners, fast food are all placed strategically in the dialogue and in the imagery, like in the scenes themselves throughout the movie, means something. Mia and Vincent went to a diner. The people were eating a burger. It was like Hawaiian Big Kahuna burger or something when they like shot that place up. And red and yellow is the colors used by many fast food chains. I know that there are many different interpretations for what red and yellow mean, just generally. Red signals aggression for a lot of people or danger. Yellow is often perceived as the color of innocence and childhood and kind of an ignorance. I perceived the movie's use of red and yellow to signal the innocence hidden underneath all of these evil acts that they're doing. Again, very basic idea, very obvious theme, but I just think it's interesting. I just think it's interesting that it went into color palette, which then went into the items they placed in the movie, which then went into the dialogue, or I don't know in what order that process kind of came out for Tarantino. I think film is interesting because it's such a convoluted form of media. Like, you have to write, you have to think of the visuals, you have to think of the sound, you have to think of the format and the chronology. And that something like that, I think, is still, it's like a simple idea that it's portraying, but the multiple ways in which it's portrayed is very complex. It bleeds into every facet of the movie that you could consider when analyzing it. Not the colors themselves, but the colors and their symbols, their associated symbols, bleed into nearly every single scene in the movie, and just highlights the fact that all of these people truly share an experience. The shared experience thing is obvious because all of their experiences all are connected at the end anyway, but this really brings it home for me. I'm sure there are also different interpretations you could come up with for red and yellow. You could say that red represents culture and yellow represents the individual, or you could talk about how it's actually a commentary on corporations and the evil hold that they have on Americans, and how the people who try to escape that by going into a life of crime are also equally as punished because you can't escape it. You could argue a lot of things. Okay, moving on. I don't even remember where I was. I was talking about Vincent. I don't really feel, honestly, like talking about all the scenes that Vincent shows up in. I could talk about his death too, but I feel like I've driven the point home. He gets killed by Butch. Butch is a boxer. Butch is a boxer who got paid off by Marcellus to lose a fight, and he ends up winning and ends up killing the other guy. There's a lot to analyze there. The fact that Butch did his best still, despite being paid off not to. He's clearly a very proud man. But I know that I know that he intentionally won the fight, at least. So even more than breaking his agreement with Marcellus. So Marcellus is mad at him. But before the fight, he told his girlfriend Fabienne to move all of their belongings out of their house, or that they need to escape, because he knew that once he wins the fight that Marcellus would come looking for him, or Marcellus's men. And Butch told Fabienne, bring the watch that my father gave me. Then the movie pans back to when Butch was a kid and his dad gave him this gold watch that has been passed down along his bloodline for centuries. Hold on, you know what? I'm gonna take a break. I need to get a drink, so I will come back. All right, I'm back. I really needed a drink. That's why I took a break. So sorry. I was talking about Butch's gold watch. I think the gold watch symbolizes the extreme lengths to which characters or to which people will go to preserve something that clearly doesn't necessarily even need to be preserved or doesn't deserve to be preserved. This is another example of something that people will do when they become complacent in some sort of cycle. The fact that Butch's dad literally stuck the watch up his ass just to prevent it from being or was it his granddad? I don't remember. just to prevent it being like taken from him. It's honorable, it's admirable, but completely unnecessary, right? Butch could have avoided a whole lot, basically his entire role in the movie, if he hadn't gone back to look for the watch, but he did, and then he gets caught up with Marcellus and ends up being like chasing Marcellus down, or Marcellus chasing him down to like that pawn shop, beforehand like hitting him with a car, like doing all of that just because of that watch. So the watch is a symbol for the things that we kind of place an unnecessary amount of importance on, and we may not realize it just because we've been unnecessarily attached to them for so long, or just because of time and because people who came before us used to value those things or value that specific thing. In his case, his family valued the watch, so he was like, oh, I've got to protect the watch. He did not need to protect the watch. I mean, a lot of people are like, yeah, but the watch is like a symbol of like dignity and his connection to his past self. Like, okay, sure. But if I look at this whole story as some sort of cautionary tale, which I do, I look at a lot of things as some sort of cautionary tale. I always think like, what is this movie telling me not to do? What is this movie telling me to do? Then I would interpret this as, just because something was valued in the past doesn't mean you need to continue valuing it and you can let go. Just because it was valued by the people who came before you doesn't mean that you need to be valuing it to the point of jeopardizing your own life to go back to an apartment infested with criminals. You know it's going to be infested with people who are like looking for you, going after you, and you still decide to go back. Like, yes, it's dedication, but by doing something like that, he's perpetuating the cycle. He's allowing them to like come after him at that point. Like, it's voluntary. He knew that they would be there, and he went back to the environment for just some small thing. So even if there's like a small thing that may be worth salvaging in a situation, this is like the most common, like basic example. You don't go back. You don't go back into a burning building. You don't go back into a building infested with criminals. Just like how that watch may have been of personal value to him, enough for him to justify the situation of putting himself and his girlfriend in danger in this cycle of normalized evil that these characters are all caught up in. There is like a gold watch for each of those characters. They just didn't like highlight them for everyone else. There's something keeping them in or like drawing them back in, and the gold watch in the movie is just a tangible symbol of that. It seems like a reasonable justification for doing something that you know will have immoral consequences, i.e. putting yourself in danger. Does that make sense? Okay, moving on. I feel like I've exhausted the topic of the gold watch. This video is about to be hella long. Okay, Butch, talked about, and then Fabian. Okay, Fabian just remains like, I feel so maternal towards her because I feel bad because she's just like this cute little French girl. She's like kind of quirky and weird. At one point she went on this rant. She was like, I really want a pot belly, and Butch was like, but then men won't like you. And she was like, yeah, but I like it and that doesn't matter. She represents like the exact opposite of, almost the exact opposite, not really, because she's still indirectly perpetuating this entire cycle because she's staying with Butch, but she's just such an innocent and passive soul. She's so innocent and passive that she's like, she plays the role of a true bystander, and her quirkiness is kind of refreshing, especially next to Butch because he's like this tough guy. I really like her. I don't know, I've heard that she pisses some people off. I don't care. I like her. I think I can just relate to her. People say that she's childish. She's not childish. Her boyfriend's involved in some sort of gang. Like, I don't think she's childish for crying and like for being emotional, being distraught by this whole situation. I don't think she's childish at all. Should we be turning this on? I feel like the lighting is so bad. Oh, it's coming from the other side, that's why. Hold on. Dude, the lighting is so good here. I'm so mad that I didn't just film here the entire time, but whatever. And the background is so pretty. Look at the trees. Whatever. Okay. I think Fabian is representative of the idea, like, if you don't say anything, you are part of the problem, but I refuse to think that she's part of the problem. Serves as kind of like an antithesis to what Butch represents. She is just an example of how extremely passive and unproblematic and unwilling people do end up getting caught up in this sort of thing and this sort of lifestyle. I don't really have much to say on her because she doesn't really do much in the story other than just follow Butch and be quirky and weird and talk about pot bellies. Okay, let me see my other note. Okay, Jules. I've saved the best for last. Jules is probably my favorite character. Okay, context. Beginning of the movie starts out with a diner scene with this couple that are planning on robbing the diner, and they're talking about it in the booth. The diner scene kind of just goes away as soon as the couple like stands up and starts saying like, everyone, this is a robbery. At the very end of the movie, it goes back to this diner scene, and it's revealed that Jules and Vincent are sitting at the diner. And this isn't what happens at the very end chronologically, but it's what happens at the very end of the movie. Jules and Vincent are sitting at the diner. Jules tells Vincent, I don't want to be a part of this life anymore. And they're talking about it. They're talking about burgers again. Not even gonna get into the whole burger thing again. But they're talking about burgers again. Then they're talking about how Jules, he wants to believe that there's a greater meaning behind all of this. He truly believes in the idea of some sort of divine intervention, and that all of those coincidences, like him getting, if you remember, I mentioned like they were shot at and none of the bullets hit either of them, and it was like a lot of bullets that just completely missed them both. And he believes that there was a true meaning behind all of that. So he's quitting, basically. He's like, this is bigger than us. I can't be a part of this life anymore. And then he mentions the Bible verse that he mentioned to that man who was eating the big kahuna burger, who they killed at the beginning of the movie. Ezekiel, I wrote it down. What was it? Ezekiel 25:17. Let me just read it to you, and we can analyze it together, because I don't think this is necessarily a religious movie. It's not. Who am I kidding? It's not. It's totally not. The Bible verse that they selected for this is the pinnacle of dramatic irony. Okay. The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the inequities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men. Blessed is he who, in the name of charity and goodwill, shepherds the weak through the valley of darkness, for he is truly his brother's keeper and the finder of lost children. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who would attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. And you will know my name in the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee. Powerful verse, right? Powerful because it highlights his deep down dissatisfaction with the role he plays in all of this. With the vengeance that he has for, not even for Marcellus, it's not even about Marcellus, about whatever greater force is causing all of them to be stuck in this cycle of individual acts that he knows are not right. And by the shepherd that is mentioned in this, I think he means the people who are able to break the cycle, and he doesn't even realize it until the very end of the movie. I'll break it down for you line by line because I feel like this isn't really making sense. The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the inequities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men. Sorry, I'm back. I paused and I really had to think about it. One's own righteousness is threatened by the tyranny of evil men. If you are able to navigate yourself through a terrible cycle like the one these characters are suffering from, and if you are able to see that for yourself and not be influenced by the people around you, then you are extremely blessed. But the word blessed connotes that you were blessed by something, and it implies that it's not entirely in your control. This verse, I think, highlights the lack of control that a lot of these characters feel over their own situation, and that they're getting punished by some great eternal force, whether that's the universe, whether that's God, whether that's human nature, whatever it is, to be angry at this situation, but they can't get out of it. And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee. When it finally manifests and shit hits the fan, kind of like it did for Jules, where he had that one pivotal moment and he realized, oh my God, I'm still alive after all of these bullets were shot at me. You can either get up and leave, or you can stay in that situation. And the people who stay, as in what happened to Vincent, inevitably get shot or get punished for it. The Lord or the universe's vengeance was laid upon him. That is my interpretation. Which brings me to, I think, my last kind of overall point. Choice, coincidence, miracles, shared experiences, all together kind of lead Jules to leave this scene. But it just happens to be the right collection of things at the right time. So in a way, fate also has a lot to do with it. But I think this verse that he repeats before killing people, he claimed, like, at the end of the movie, at the time, he didn't even realize why he was doing it. He was like, oh, it's just like a badass verse that I can say to scare them a little before I shoot them in the face. This verse says that you have a lot more control than you think you do. And he finally realized that. He finally realized that he actually is in control, despite being caught up in all of these butterfly effects, essentially. But as an individual, you can't see that. But the way that the movie was set makes you focus on that. It makes you focus on the butterfly effects. But there is no real reason for you to focus on that. Life lessons from Pulp Fiction. I'm not going to regurgitate everything I just said, because I think you can kind of make of this analysis, this chaotic analysis, what you will. My ideas are all over the place in terms of like analyzing movies and books and things like that. So it's very hard for me to sit down and make a video like this, but let me know if you enjoyed it and if you'd like to see more things like this. Otherwise, I'll go back to my usual broadcast. But yes, that is it for today's video. Thank you for watching. I really love Pulp Fiction, and I hope this video kind of made you either want to watch it or love it. So yeah, okay. See you in the next one. Bye.